Good morning, beloveds. Just so you know, sometimes this is the first mirror I look in the mornings. I'm not big on mirrors to begin with. And I look in the mirror and then I see my hair and go, oh, maybe I should have looked in the mirror first. But my hair has a mind of its own and does what it's going to do. There doesn't seem to be much I can do about it. So I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, a relaxing Christmas. This was the last day of 3 that I got to turn my alarm off and just not get up. Yesterday, normally I would have gotten up on Saturday and gone to the park, but due to some trucking snafus, my husband chose to go in early on Saturday, and I was like, I will just, and we were going to go to the park later, and then that didn't end up happening, so it is what it is, right? But we had fed the squirrels on Friday, so they weren't, and trust me, there are plenty of other people who enjoy feeding the squirrels in the park. They are not going hungry. But today is Sunday. It is December 27th, and our title is, I Bless Everything and Know That All Good Will Multiply in My Experience. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. And that is from James 1:25. God, is not created in the past, nor is it to be annihilated in the future. It is eternal, permanent, absolute, and from all entity it sufficiently embraces in its essence all possible merits. And that is from the Mahayana. Mahayana. In case you want to look it up. Alright. James tells us that we should look to the perfect law of liberty, follow its precepts, and then we shall be blessed in our deeds. This means to keep the eye single or centered on the presence, the power, and the responsiveness of spirit. The law of God would have to be a law of liberty, since bondage could not come from freedom any more than death could be born from the principle of life. We often wonder why we are so limited, and too frequently project the blame for our limitations upon the universe itself. This is a psychological trick that we play in ignorance of the true facts. Limitation is not imposed upon us by the universe, but through our own ignorance. Every discovery in science tends to prove this. The invisible takes temporary form in our experience. Fortunately, none of these forms is permanent. We should look upon them as the play of life upon itself. In our own experience, we are privileged by the creative wisdom to become creators in our personal affairs. The divine creative spirit embraces every possible action. No greater freedom could be found or given, and we should daily open our consciousness to the divine influx, expecting greater freedom, more definite guidance, and more complete self-expression. Today, I lift up my consciousness and receive a more abundant expression. I bless everything and know that all good will multiply in my experience. I expect the good. I live in a state of joyous anticipation, as well as quiet realization. I expect the all good to manifest in my experience today. Whew, okay. Which reminds me of, I know Marianne Williamson is one of the people who said it, that we're not afraid of, no, I'm not going to quote her right, but it's basically what we are afraid of is how powerful we really are. And then I've seen other people quote that they are not afraid of, they're not afraid of us. What they're afraid of is that we'll figure out how powerful we are. So, especially when we work together. So, what we impose the limits upon ourselves because we are afraid of just how powerful we actually are. It also comes down to a responsibility thing too. If I limit myself, then when I fail, then I can blame the limitations. But if I realize that I'm imposing the limits on myself, then I'm responsible for my own failure. There's nobody outside of me to blame when I fail, because I'm imposing my own limits. That argument only goes so far because we do live in community, and there are, limits within community. There are also things that we do. The whole mask debate, people talk about rights and they never talk about responsibilities. And it's like, the reason why we wear a mask is not to protect ourselves, but to protect other people from us. That's your responsibility. It's not a limitation. It's a responsibility. So sometimes people talk about a limit, and it's not a limit, it's a responsibility. So, okay. So, I will bless everything and know that all good will multiply in my experience. That is our title today. And he does a better job of explaining James than I do, but let's take another look at it. But whosoever looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he will not be a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work. This man shall be blessed in his deed. Okay. Whosoever looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein. Practice. It's like, oh, there's a law. The perfect law of liberty. Let me practice that. And if I practice it, then I don't forget it. Because it becomes, like I like to call it, a default setting. I was raised in the era of computers. So if we practice this perfect law of liberty, then it becomes our default setting, and therein we shall be blessed in our deeds, because we are going to be using the law of liberty rather than focused on our limitations. Okay. And by the way, God is in brackets, so it was not created in the past, nor is it to be annihilated in the future. It is eternal, permanent, absolute, and from all eternity, it sufficiently embraces its essence, all possible merits. So, I mean, that's just that's the Mahayana, and that's just saying God is always. God is not bound in time. Matter is bound in time. We are not bound in time, but the material form that we wear is bound in time. And that's just a limitation that we impose by choosing to take on this material form. Really? Okay. She may just be below your camera. She's down here licking me. It's somewhat distracting. Okay. So, God is not created in the past, nor to be annihilated in the future. It is eternal and permanent. God is not subject to time. Alright, so James tells us that we should look to the perfect law of liberty, follow its precepts, and then we shall be blessed in our deeds. Practice. Practice, practice, practice. This means to keep the eye single or cemented on the presence, the power, and the responsiveness of spirit. Practice. The law of God would have to be a law of liberty, since bondage could not come from freedom any more than death could be born of the principle of life. I don't even know what to do with that sentence. I will let you meditate on that one. We often wonder why we are so limited and too frequently project the blame of our limitations upon the universe itself. we often wonder why we are so limited. Because we're afraid to try. Because we're afraid to fail. And the truth is failure is never a failure if you learn something. I mean, that's the whole scientific process right there. It's like, well, I'm going to try this. And if I don't get the outcome that I expect, then I've learned something. I mean, really, honestly, science is one failure after another until we learn, it's like, and sometimes our failures are pretty amazing and we're like, oh, I was not expecting that. Can I do it again? Well, yes, I can do it again. And then we've learned something. We're afraid to try. We're afraid to fail. But what we have forgotten is that failure isn't failure. Failing to try is failure. Because in failure, when we fail something, we learn something. All right. And then we blame the universe. It's like the universe operates on laws. I mean, gravity never fails. So, we just haven't learned all of the little subsets of rules. And that's what we're doing. It's like things are magic until we learn how they work. And even after we learn how they work, it's still magic. We just now know how to do it and replicate it. This is a psychological trick that we play in ignorance of the true facts. Limitation is not imposed upon us by the universe, but through our own ignorance. That's what I mean. We haven't learned the rules. We haven't learned the little subsets of rules. And the cool thing when you look at quantum physics, because when you look at what they call Newtonian physics, there's a certain set of laws. And then you get to quantum physics, and those laws don't apply anymore. There's a whole new set of laws. And it's like, but it still works once you figure out how it works, it still works in expected ways. It's still replicatable. Every discovery in science tends to prove this. I'm all talking about science. The invisible takes temporary form in our experience. Fortunately, none of these forms are permanent. We should look upon them as the play of life upon itself. That's just really cool. We should look upon them as the play of life upon itself. In our own experience, we are privileged by the creative wisdom to become creators in our personal affairs. We are privileged by the creative wisdom to become creators in our personal affairs. We have the power to create, to change, to affect our own personal affairs. And we have the power to influence our community affairs as well. And there's a difference between personal affairs and community affairs, because that's creation intersecting and interacting. And that's one of the reasons why it is important for those of us who are aware of our personal agency to get out and, do our community agency. Our goal is a world that works for everybody. We want to teach everybody that they have the power to affect their own lives, but we also want to make a community that allows and accepts this. It's like, yeah, we're not third graders. We can all make good choices. We can all make good choices. Do we all make good choices? No. But we can. We just need to know that we can. We need to have the faith that we can. All right. Let's see. The divine creative spirit embraces every possible action. Oof. Meaning anything is possible. Anything is possible. No greater freedom could be found or given And we should daily open our consciousness to the divine influx, expecting greater wisdom, more definite guidance, and more complete self-expression. Daily practice. Daily practice. Oh. Because, and that's what he was talking about, I think it was yesterday, where he was talking about divine guidance. Like, the more you look for the divine guidance, once you learn the signs and symbols of the divine guidance, the more of it you will see. It's like once you learn the symbols of the divine guidance, then you're like, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. It's like you go from not being guided at all to having a whole lot of guidance simply because you are now aware of it. And that's the same thing here with the divine influx. It's like once you're open to it, you have the power to turn that faucet up and down. It's like, do you want creative ideas? Do you want personal agency? What do you want? Do you want divine guidance? Well, practice opening to it, and then feel free to turn it up and down as you will, because once you started that trickle, it's hard to turn it off. It's really hard to turn it off. And then you will be a more complete self-expression because you will be expressing more of your divine nature, more of your creative nature, more of who you are, which is a beloved child of God. A godling, as Reverend Jesse likes to say. Today, I lift up my consciousness and receive a more abundant expression. Affirmations. I bless everything and know that all good will multiply in my experience. And that really is, read I bless everything as gratitude. The more thankful for what we have, we are, the more of it we tend to get. It's like, I'm more grateful. The more divine guidance I'm grateful for, the more of it I tend to get. I expect the good. And that's one of those things we're always preparing for what could go wrong, which is a good idea. It's like, we should prepare, just in case. But we should also expect what could go right. It goes back to that power of gratitude. I expect the good. I live in a state of joyous anticipation. What could go right? As well as quiet realization. I'm not terribly good at the quiet part. I expect the all good to manifest in my experience today. Say that to yourself 3 times before you go out your door. Or before you get out of bed. I mean, really, that's where it starts. It's like you are awake before you even open your eyes. I expect the all good to manifest in my experience today. Which, by the way, all good is capitalized. We're not talking small potatoes here. Okay. So our mission today, should we choose to accept it, I bless everything. I practice gratitude and know that the all good will multiply in my experience. I will recognize where God is in my experience, which is everywhere. So, that is December 27th. We have 4 days left. Yep, we have 4 days left. It's going to be weird to go back to January, because I'm going to do the whole thing. I started towards the end of March, so I'm going to go back and so that I've done all 365 days. So it'll be interesting to go to January. And then somebody else has suggested another book, so I'll probably continue to do this. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I think that I have learned a lot and grown a lot. So we'll see. All right. I am going to encourage you, as I always do, to do something loving for yourself, do something kind for yourself, do something compassionate for yourself. It is especially important during the holidays to do some self-care. You can't pour from an empty cup. So take a moment, take a quiet moment to yourself, make yourself a good cup of whatever, tea, coffee, Drink a good glass of water. I'm all about hydrating, which is what I'm going to go do in a minute. And do something to engage your mind and your body, whatever that looks like today. It looks like it's a beautiful day out there. I don't even know what the temperature is out there. It could be on the cool side, or it could be fairly warm. It got almost to 70 yesterday. It was a beautiful day yesterday. Yeah. So, open the windows of your soul. Allow that breath of heaven to remind you that you live in heaven now. You live in a state of grace, and you live in that state of grace because you are a beloved child of God, in whom Spirit is well pleased. Always. Spirit is not subject to time, and neither are you. Oh my goodness. All right, beloveds. And I will do so, Cleopatra. I'll bring it in on the 31st. And then you'll have a couple of months. And I did get it at the CLC bookstore. We had it. So, yeah. Sorry. Distracted myself. Reverend David, no. First things first, there is an 11 a.m. service. I have no idea who's going to be there. Other than, the usual complement of me and Jesse and Jeffrey and Danielle. So I'm not sure what other musicians might be there. It's always fun for me to show up and go, oh, this is who's here today. So we will be on Facebook Live at 11. Reverend David will be on around 5 p.m. And I will be back with y'all at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I got to work 4 days. I get to work 4 days next week. And I am going to as far as I know, I'm going to the gym tomorrow. Oh, gosh, I need to get up and go. Y'all have a wonderful day. It's going to be a beautiful Sunday. So, enjoy the holiday seasons as much as you can. Bye, beloveds.